To the new month, and thank you for joining Facing the Nation today. As is customary, I always want to remind you to call up a friend, call up a neighbor, and let them know that Facing the Nation is on. And you can catch us on Channel 6 and all of our social media platforms, the People's National Congress Reform page on Facebook, and the APNU AFC page on Facebook, and of course also on YouTube. So call up a friend, tell them that Facing the Nation is on, and let's get today's program started. Now, as I have promised for a while now, that we will be having a very interactive session where today I want to hear from you. Let us talk about the issues, raise concerns. Let's talk about what is happening. And today I'll be giving you the opportunity to call in. You can present issues, you can ask questions, and let's, have an interactive session today. So today's program is basically a call-in program while we discuss some of the prominent issues. Now, just before I get into that, and my operator will soon put the number on the screen, I want to start out by giving my sincere condolences to the family of Comrade Don Carroll Johnson, who was one of our counselors in the Pleasance Industry NDC, a very hard worker for the People's National Congress Reform and the Coalition. She would have passed away last Sunday, and we just want to share and express our condolence to the family and comrades and friends who are feeling this loss at this time. And we pray that God will continue to comfort you as we go through this period. And today being the 1st of September, I want to wish all of my Indigenous brothers and sisters a happy Heritage Month. As you know, this month we will celebrate our Indigenous people in different forms, fashion, and style. To start this discussion out, as I will begin to look at the comments, and of course the let the audience at the time see the number that they can call in, as I wish the Amerindian brothers and sisters happy Heritage Month. We know that so much has been happening in their communities. There's so many issues pending. We had the issue recently of the rape allegations, as you know, by then sitting Minister of Government, Mr. Dharmlal. And we've had the issue with the Madhya fire, which left 20 of our Indigenous children dead after that aftermath. And, we're still watching a lot of other issues unfolding. And, that's one of the things as well I want us to talk about, and people to share their views as well about, because so much is happening as we enter this month that they should be celebrating, but there is so much happening at this time. I want to share a clipping of one of the former two shows, where he basically sums up what has been happening over the last about 3 years or so. Operator?
Development with the American brothers. But I just want to bring you up to date with this present government. First, um, I was to show for this village. My brother, cousin, everybody is one religion, one American, right? But since this government came into power, right, he has teach, segregate my cousin. You cannot talk to your cousin, no. Yes, PNC, yes, PPP. Segregation. We are not living in peace no more. That is what happened. But those who think that this present government is doing right, they do not know anything. But the old folks know what is development. Because giving you $30,000 is not development. So we need to have more and to educate those young people to understand. And I'm glad today that this team who came here to teach us so that they may understand. I'm glad I'm 65 years of age, I still understand English, and those who are young have ears to listen so that we must live in harmony.
Mhm. So we hear our indigenous brother there summing up how he feels in terms of what has been happening under this government, and what he is calling it is basically they have infiltrated their communities and have started to cause divide and segregation among family, basically. And if we have been paying attention for the last, I would say, 2 years, and even as they talk a lot about one day, I know that is exactly what we have been seeing, a lot of issues where they're being put at odds against each other. I see a person is asking if the number is a WhatsApp. Yes, the number is also WhatsApp. You can call straight. And I do believe the WhatsApp as well is working. So you can call either on WhatsApp or you can call directly. Let me just state, I will not be accepting any private calls. I will not be accepting anyone making any racial remarks of any kind as well on this program. We will make our points and be respectful no matter what. All right, so the floor is open for calls, even as I continue the discussion. And of course, as I said to you, I'll be looking at the comments because I want today's program to be a very interactive one. I want to hear from the viewers about the issues that you're facing, the things that you think we need to be talking about more. Let's talk about that. So I've just shown you the video, a recent video, as a matter of fact. I do believe this meeting was held last week, where a team visited the indigenous community, and basically they were giving their views and issues on what has been happening and what they have been seeing happening in their communities. And of course, as I said earlier, we know that the indigenous community currently is facing a great deal of issues at this time. And of course, they're seeing no real assistance or help from the current government. What the next thing that I want to move on for us to talk about basically here, as I said, I'll be running some topics, and I'll of course be waiting for you to call in. I'll be reading your comments so that we can keep the program interactive. I have noted that the president is back to his obsession and his issue. Apparently, he's still very hurt about the handshake issue. And this week we have been seeing that issue resurface. I find it very funny that the president is using that to say that he cannot have consultations or he's not consulting with the opposition on that, where, it's as if we are playing kids' games. Because you didn't get a handshake, then matters cannot be addressed, etc. So we're seeing that happening again. And as always, you'll see different comments, people talking about different things. And I feel the need to remind persons, this incident, particularly of the first issue with the handshake happening on the 1st of August 2022, we ought to be able to take into context, a lot of what would have happened during that time. We are talking basically 2 years in from a regime who decided that they can send home whoever they want, however they want. And a lot of that happened from the office of the president, from direct instructions of the president. You had a lot of extrajudicial killings, happening. You had the Henry Boyce case. And in fact, just before that incident, we had the murder of Quindon Bacchus, which had sparked protests on the East Coast. And then we had the issue where basically the persons from Golden Grove area would have called on the president to come and try to handle the situation. There was a protest, and by somehow persons in the Monrepo area stands were affected, and instead we saw the president running down to Monrepo giving compensation to persons who lost items. And a day like today, that very man who is carrying on and talking about all kinds of things has not visited Golden Grove to talk to the residents. Even after, in the middle of the night, the police shooting up shops and homes, no compensation was given to those families who were not even on the road in terms of protests. And the very, very president wants to tell us that, he had to get a handshake during this time. And, these are issues that we must take into context. And I want us to understand we are dealing with a level of oppression that we're seeing coming from the government. And this man was practically fighting for a handshake at that time. And for me, that makes absolutely no sense. Let me read some of these comments. If you can go up for me, I saw up a little bit more, please. The person asked, what is the latest update on the Chinese landing issue? Now, recently I did see an article and some conversation where there has been some back and forth with the current Tushao and the previous Tushao in this regard. I do not believe the matter, though, is settled, but they are now Marudi Company, I believe, is I saw either Monday or Tuesday, would now be looking to have another sit down with the residents and the Tusha of that area to settle those mining issues. And I mean, that is a very important question. And of course, I will continue to follow. The person is saying no handshake until everyone, all six races are treated fairly. And, this is what we're saying. This is what, you know, we are, basically talking about. And of course, this conversation came up again with the about the handshake, where the outgoing ambassador basically would have said that, the president and the opposition, or the government and the opposition, needs to work together on issues, and talked about, having better systems put in place for elections. And of course, this somehow angered the president to talk again about that issue. You know, Ali needs to get over that handshake that Mr. Norton didn't give to him, or he couldn't take it to his, or he can take it to his grave. Quite frankly, so. I mean, as one of the persons who was there as well, who did not shake the president's hand, I'll tell you this from a personal standpoint. There was no way, and at any time, would I, Shanieka Haynes, be shaking the president's hand on any matter of issues, because I can tell you personally, from the 3rd of August 2020, I faced direct victimization by the very president who is walking around begging for handshakes and is upset about persons not giving handshakes. In fact, my entire household, all the breadwinners of that household, would have lost their jobs because I have a political affiliation. So the sitting president cannot be serious about telling people, that they have to shake his hand or there can be no consultation. He's talking about consultation. He and the opposition leader who has talked about this several times over, he would have given his consent and permission for him to swear in the Chief Justice and the Chancellor. And to this date, he has not gone ahead with that. And it only begs to ask the question why he hasn't gone ahead. Is it because they're two black women? Is it because they're women? Is it because they're black? Why is it that the one thing that you surely have agreement on in terms of consultation with the opposition and the government, that you're not moving ahead? I'm looking to see, Ali needs to, okay, I saw that one. Yeah, so, the handshake thing at this point, Ali is petty. He doesn't even know his role as president. Correct, because whether somebody shakes your hand or not, you have roles that you must play, things that you must do in keeping your role as president. And clearly, Ifrenali feels that he can go about with his arrogance. And you know what was funny in the video? He tried to paint himself as this lovely, nice person. And I want to show some clips today because I want to remind Guyanese, while he rants and raves about a handshake and, it being whatever, I want us to understand and keep in mind who we're dealing with. I want to pull up the first video, I believe is the issue that we recently had. We're at the building expo that would have just passed. We had the president snatching up a bodyguard as though it is his child and he can do whatever he wants. I want us to take a look at this video. This is the president snatching up a bodyguard. This man that paints himself to be such a nice, wonderful person. He's not arrogant in any form. And he did this in front of the outgoing ambassador and all those persons there. And I will tell you, this is not the first complaint. This is the first one that we see on video. But I will tell you, in the security forces, particularly the presidential guards, there are tons of complaints about the attitude of the president towards those workers. And we know he doesn't care much for public servants and people of that nature because we see what's happening. But there are reports that one time, one of the bodyguards doing their work, not knowing who the person was, and in an attempt to just shield them off a bit, the president slapped the security guard, the bodyguard. And here we are now looking at video evidence of similar treatment of another bodyguard. And this is the man who wants to bring up about God and this and that and the Torah. So that's what we're looking at. And I also want to pull up the other video. This was done when he went to visit the what you call it. He visited Buxton just after he would have visited Monrepo to hand out compensation, and he went over to Buxton to, I guess, decide that he can pacify, and this is what happened. Let's take a look at that.
Who is he? Who is this man? Who is he? Who is this joker? Who is that joker?
This is how
That piece of plum.
this is how the president, this man that wants to paint himself as some nice person, is basically referring
Who is he? Who is this
to
joker?
persons calling, and at this point, I do believe that it was Mr. David Hines
That piece of
who
plum.
he referred to as a clown and joker and all these things. Could you pull that down for me so I can see the comments as well? Yes, so this is the same man who is preaching, oh, who should ask for forgiveness. And every day we are seeing the full arrogance and, of this man. It says here he's too arrogant. That's how you behave when you attend IFLOT University, correct? This person says you destroy black people's homes and you want a handshake for that. Correct. We have seen so many issues where, as much as the very arrogant behavior of Ali, what we see is him walking around trying to present himself as a respectable person, and he's such a good and wonderful man and he cares about all of Guyana and one Guyana. And every time and every policy that we're seeing develop under his watch, we are seeing that groups of persons, whether they are of African descent, whether they are non-supporters, whether they're indigenous people, those policies, those policies that are being put up are not for them. And this is what we're talking about, Guyanese. And if the president would only understand and looking what the Guyanese people are looking for, is not someone who gives them a facade, because we're no longer, daft when it comes to certain things, or we are not seeing what is happening. Social media is there. The things that we would have missed prior to, we are not missing now, because somebody always has a camera. And you cannot continue to tell us that you are for one day and you're for every race, and every policy that you develop shows us that you are seeking to destroy the lives of people and the people of your country. This person says Ali only wanted a handshake for a photo op to pretend to the world that everything in Guyana is good. And that is correct. Whether we want to take it or not, this is what we are talking about. You know, that we have a sitting government, instead of providing and building policies that will suit all of our people. Instead, we find that you have a government who is comfortable with pretending that they're for all people, while at the same time, they are basically trampling on the masses of the people. Because as it stands, as you all know, we're seeing what's happening on a daily basis. It's that the ordinary man, the regular Guyanese, are being trampled upon. We had the issue in Pleasance where we mounted a protest. I was there against the VP who was coming after basically giving a 6-day ultimatum to persons to move, pretending to come in like the Lord and save the village, to tell people that, he's going to give an extension. And when you had other ministers there, all of this happening through the Darmlal situation, you had the minister of youth, sports, and culture. Basically, when questions were being asked, all he kept doing was turning his back. And that is how this government basically operates. They continue to turn their backs on the Guyanese people when they ask questions of them, when they seek to find out how they can move on. You will have them basically turning their backs on the citizens. And these are things that we as a people, here we are, here's the video up there, where basically I'm asking of questions that pertain to the village. And the sitting minister decides that he can turn his back. He doesn't have to address the residents. He doesn't have to address the people. Rather, that's him turning his back. And I let them know this is how they treat with the country. When persons ask them and they question and they try to find out, the only things that they do is turn their back on the nation. I see what happened to the Guyana Human Rights Association. Are they functional? Now, Miss Thomas, there are so many things, so many organizations within this country where you would have expect them to stand up, to speak out, to come out when there are clear breaches of issues, and yet still we see nothing happen. A lot of these organizations are now politically controlled, and they cannot come out and speak unless it is something that is dealing, with the opposition rather than doing a fair job. And we cannot continue this way. This is one of the reasons we continue to implore Guyanese, whether here or abroad, that we have to find ways to hold the government accountable. A man with 19 fraud charges, what our Guyanese expect. These are fair comments, because when you have all these issues and the law and the people and the court system and nothing is working to have these matters addressed, we end up with persons who are unqualified and persons who practically do not care about this country, running this country. So, it is something that we must continue to talk about. It is something that we must continue to hold the government accountable for. This government currently, in every sector, we are seeing major issues, And I forgot in the start of my program, we would have, I think it was last weekend, between Saturday to Sunday, this country lost 8 young people to accidents. And yet still, the minister responsible for security and the commissioner, etc., have not as yet worked out a proper plan to help curb the issue. We have been seeing a dramatic increase in road accidents and deaths, particularly. And, we haven't seen that level of ramping up to handle the issue. In fact, just yesterday, right outside of Congress Place on Dennis Street End, there was an accident with 2 vehicles, and an infant would have died. And these are things, as we see them as well, we must not take lightly. And I tell persons, I don't take seeing the level of bloodshed on the streets. We've had a dramatic increase of fires as well, where we see young people, children, mothers with their child aunt with their niece. We've seen so many incidents in this country where we see it's just blood and it's life being taken in that regard. And we as a people, we have to hold those persons accountable when it comes to these things. And we must talk about it, and we must find ways basically to hold the government accountable. And we cannot say at any point, because we sit down and we hear the commissioner of police and others talk about whether crime has increased. You always hear particularly under this government, when we are seeing every day in the newspaper, we are seeing that the robberies are increasing, we're seeing that the accidents are increasing, and that we need to deal with it. But I'll tell you, the Bible says when the wicked rule, the people mourn. And Guyana is definitely, from what we have been seeing for the last, particularly last about 3 months or more, we are definitely in a state of mourning. And as Guyanese, we have to stand up and we have to deal with these issues because it's unbecoming. I just found the video, I believe, where this was while he was the presidential candidate for, when he, the president, who talks about God, attempted to overthrow a sitting minister's vehicle. I want us to take a look at this. Yep. Another video showing, the man himself, the man that, tells people who needs to repent to God, etc., for all manners of things. But this is the level of arrogance and ignorance that is displayed by our sitting president. But at that time, he was the presidential candidate, I believe, at the time for the PPP at that time. I'm reading the comments. I want you to know, for those who joined late, the phone number on the screen, of course, if you're overseas, you have to add 592 to the front of the number, 592-684-8758. I do believe the number is available via WhatsApp and regular call. So if we just have a few minutes remaining, if you want to call in to raise any issues or talk about anything, the phone line is open for you to make that call. So don't be afraid. Let me hear at least two persons calling, and let me hear what is it that is you're concerned about, what it is that you feel we can do, or any of those things. So I'm waiting on you to call in. The phone line is open. It has been open, WhatsApp or straight. Please know that I will not be receiving any private calls, and I will not accept any racial comments or anything of that nature that will make our criticisms, or anything that we have to say. We will do so respectively. One of the persons online is saying all of these bloodshed and fire going on is not normal. There are a lot of blood sacrifice ongoing. And I do believe those are things that we have to watch. That's why, even as we must be doers, and we get down to exposing and working on the issues, that we as well have to whomever you pray to, you must pray, because something very extraordinary indeed is happening in this nation, and it must be dealt with. um it's definitely is not normal. The conference is upcoming. I'm not sure what conference. What would be Ali's legacy? It's the worst we've have seen in Guyana. Let me get that comment. What would be Ali legacy? It's the worst we have seen in Guyana: accidents, fire, blood by the road, sea, and guns. That is correct. We are seeing a rapid increase of all manners of things. You know, we also had only last week where in the Berbice area, a mother and son was found chopped up in their homes. I mean, it bothers you to think who would commit such gruesome crimes as we see um, these things happening at this time. But we must ask ourselves, what can we do and how do we do it? Indeed, there is too much death happening in the country. These videos must be posted every day as a reminder to some, and at every time he comes out with his nonsense. Correct, I agree because I mean sometimes I think when Ali comes out and he talks about the things that he talks about and the way he talks about it, we tend to forget this is the same man who would have a lot of these um performed a lot of these acts. We see here the PPP is a blight and a curse in our nation. I pray that God soon deliver us from the evil PPP illegitimate regime. Way too much. It's very scary. Indeed, way too many incidents, way too many accidents, way too many murders. We saw in Bartik as well. And the issues and the problems are becoming even more gruesome. We saw in Bartika, I believe it was last weekend as well, where a businessman would have hammered a man to death. You know, you wonder what will give somebody that kind of enthusiasm to do something like that. And we even saw when the businessman, who happens to be the son of a PPP counselor in Bartica, which is something to note, when he went to the police station for a murder as gruesome as that, he was granted bail. So even if there was that opening for him to get away before it actually made it to the court, that opportunity would have been afforded to him, because rather than holding him for the court timing, they would have released him on bail at that time. Thankfully, this week he did go to court and he is now remanded, I believe, until the 29th of September, when that case will be heard again. So there are so many issues, so many things happening that we must keep abreast with, and we must begin to rally together, to bond together, to ensure when we head to the next polls, when we continue to call for a clean voters list and biometrics and these things that will help us to have a free and fair election, we as Guyanese, understanding what we are going through, we must come together to ensure that the persons who would have brought this level of curse and sadness and level of mistrust and no hope in this country be put out of government. It is on us to hold these systems that are put there accountable, to ensure that the country benefits holistically. Okay, so where I see well calculated protests, we have the numbers. Right, we need to, but as people, because I think I would have said this before on the program. I continue to share stories, listen to viewers, and we talk about things because one of the things that I believe that we don't yet get as Guyanese is that if we as a people stand up together, we can do anything and we can get anything done. I tell people the truth is, in 2020, when the government came into power, they sent home almost 1,000 public servants. And it bemoans you to think, with almost 1,000 public servants going home, if every single one of those public servants would have come to the street with one other family member who was in support of them protesting the fact that they were sent home, that would have been 2,000 persons or almost 2,000 persons on the streets. And the fact that even with the level of mistreatment being meted out to those persons, that we did not see that, it means that we have to deal with a lot of things. And as a people, we must understand our power and what we are capable of doing if we stand up as one together to get what is desired. As a people, we must understand that we have a role. It's not just the politician's role, it's not just the leader of the opposition, the member of parliament's role. They have their roles to play. But where you will see impact is where the people, the citizens of the country, stand up together for the just cause. When we stand against the corruption that we see, when we stand against the discrimination that we are seeing, then we as a people will be able to, you know, see the realization of the justice that we speak. Guyanese people at home needs to get and unite to bring the PPP down, boots on the ground. We have to come to a stage when we decide that enough is enough and that we will stand together and that we will hold the government accountable. You know, I continue to say, as we're beginning to wrap up, I continue to say that we as a people, we are only as strong as we are united. When we are able to come together as a people, we will be able to deal with the many issues that we're facing daily. It is upon us to come together. It is upon us to stick together and to get the job done. Every citizen holds that responsibility. Guyana is at a place where we are seeing, no matter what the PPP says, we are seeing a vast, vast difference in terms of wealth. And while we're seeing that, we're also seeing heavy spending on things that will continue to put us into debt rather than bring us out as a people out of poverty. We are all seeing the heavy increase in food and all the different items. I mean, for those of you who have been shopping for school items and that kind of thing, you see what's happening in the stores. You also know that that $40,000 was not enough for you to buy the things that you needed for that one child, and it will definitely not give you transportation to take that child to school. So, therefore, you need a government that has proper plans and policies. By all means, the money is the taxpayers' money and we can afford it. You can be given that money, but there are also other policies that must be put in place to help the people, to help the people. Their complaint school. One of the other issues that we're seeing, um, a lot of complaints are coming for. School is about to reopen. Many schools are still not in the state that it should be for the return of schools. You have schools complaining the subvention to buy materials and all these things are not given to them, and school is on Monday. Therefore, it means that school has to find the money, or they're going to beg parents some money, or they're going to tell children that they have to bring in a donation, etc., to get the things that the ministry has the money to do. You're talking about schools that are asking for help in terms of preparing a sick bay at a school. Why do we have a Ministry of Education if the school has to handle all of these matters with the help of parents and donors? What is the ministry doing in terms of preparation of school? Another term is coming. We saw a big 600 plus million contract given out. It's 2 years and change now to an entertainment company to do construction work, and the school only has a foundation and a skeleton for another term. We have to call the government out. My people, we have to hold them accountable. And everywhere you go, at every junction, every step, when they come to our homes and they come into our communities to pretend that they love us, we need to ask the questions. We need to push them towards getting the things done. What did Priya do with those billions in the budget? We are left to wonder, because I'm telling you, schools are complaining heavily. And I personally know of schools who are going into PTA groups and begging for funds, because guess what? The things that should have been done are not done. So as I wrap up today, I'm already over my time, and I didn't get those calls. I don't know why. I hope the phone was working well, and maybe everybody was satisfied just posting today. But I'll try to make this a regular feature where even if I have a guest, I'll have this phone here. So if you want to call in, you can do so as well. But I want us to understand that when they come into our communities, because the president, of course, up until the opposition leaders started to go into communities, now they're up and about and going into communities now. We have to ask the questions and we have to hold them accountable. Next week, I want to take a look into some of the infrastructure work that are being done in lots of communities, and bring those complaints and the issues that are there. And we will talk about that as well next week. We're dealing with an uncaring government who don't care about Guyana. All they care about is getting rich, and by any means necessary. I do believe that that is the case, because there is no other explanation. We have all these monies, we have all these things happening, but yet still it's not translating to the people and the needs of the people, and the policies are not policies that are benefiting the ordinary. To my viewers today, I want to thank you for joining, because, of course, I am over my time already. And I want you to bear in mind the things that we talked about. And, let us continue to hold this government accountable. I cannot overstate this. I want to remind you that the APNU, on every Tuesday, we are in front of the GCOM office on Main Street, because we continue to call for a clean voters list. And we're asking you to come out and join us because we have to take this fight now. Elections are soon approaching, and we must get some resemblance of an electoral system that will be free and fair. So we need to have persons coming out. It is every Tuesday at 12 o'clock in front of the GCOM office. Feel free to join us. All right. I want to thank you once again for joining Facing the Nation. I do hope I see you next week here joining us again at the same time, 12:30 to 1:30. And we continue to have these conversations. Next week I will have a special guest with me, and we will have another interactive session as well. Thank you once again for joining Facing the Nation.